standing in front of Le Cachot, which means a dungeon or a prison, because it had been used as a jail, but it was a miserable place, and it wasn't even worthy of the prisoners. And when poor Bernadette and her family had nowhere else to go, they ended up in here. And this is, from here is where she went when the first apparition took place on February 11th, 1858. From here, she would go just down the street to the pastor to ask for what the Blessed Mother asked for. She wanted a chapel to be built on the spot of the apparitions. The pastor wasn't too open to that. It was a very, very difficult place to live in. The family was all confined in one room. There was a very dank and damp atmosphere, not good for their health, especially for poor little Bernadette who had asthma. She was so tiny. She was 4'7", 14 years old when she had the apparitions. So it was a very difficult suffering for them. And of course it was a humiliation because they had lived in a nice mill house and they had had a good living, and now they were paupers. And then after the apparitions took place, it was very difficult. People began to assume that they had done the apparitions with just a fabrication so that they could grow rich. But they never took any money, and they didn't want to be rich. They wanted to be open to what God wanted. And then after the apparitions took place, people were always trying to look in there through the doorway and through the window to find out, see who this little girl was. So Bernadette only stayed here for about 2 more years after the apparitions, and then she went away to Nevers, to some sisters. She stayed with some sisters, and eventually she joined those sisters and became a nun. Her life in the convent wasn't so easy either. And she never came back after 6 years after the apparitions, when she was there for the consecration of one of the chapels here. But she always came each day in her heart to the grotto, to be united with Mary. And her ministry in the convent was to take care of sisters, and it was a ministry of prayer. And she prayed for the conversion of sinners. So she became like a victim soul. She said, Mary picked me because I was poor and miserable. If she could have found anyone even more miserable than me, she would have picked her. About 50% of the French children at that time were illiterate, and she was as well. So Bernadette became a great saint, coming from very difficult circumstances. We are called to sainthood as well. Let's ask Saint Bernadette to pray for us.